Welcome to this episode of Humanizing AI. I'm your host, Cesar Koirala. If you have been in the trenches of AI deployment lately, you know that the honeymoon phase of prototyping is over. We've moved from asking, what can this do, to how do we actually run this safely at scale? In my time at United Health, it became clear to me that there's a massive gap between the high level principles we talk about in governance teams and the technical reality in the developer's notebook. We have the policy, but we don't have the plumbing to prove it's working. Today, we are going to talk to two people who are building that infrastructure, right? That framework. We're diving into AIGovOps, treating governance as not as a manual hurdle, but as a rigorous engineering discipline, as I understand. Let me introduce our guests today. We have Ken Johnston and Bob Rapp. Ken comes from deep background in software quality and data science at Microsoft and recently at Ford and Enverso, where he led engineering teams. He spent his career thinking about how we test and validate massive systems, and he's now applying that rigor to the AI lifecycle. Bob has been on the front lines of AI and digital transformation at Microsoft, GE, Ford, General Motors, you name it. He has managed AI in environments where close enough isn't an option, right? And he's focused on moving the industry from shadow AI towards automated, verifiable evidence. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having
Good
us.
to be here. Thanks, Cesar.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, how about we do this, right? Let's talk about the foundation's purpose first, right? So can you please tell our viewers more about the AI GovOps Foundation and its goals? What was the specific missing piece in the industry that led you to start this?
I'll go ahead and kick it off, but I'll throw it over to you in just a second, Bob. But, it really comes down to one fundamental thing that just hit us as we were talking, which is governance today is really PDF theater, that everything is wrapped up in documents. It's all caught up in committees and people are talking about it. And we wanted to have a group that simply said, governance doesn't work unless it's in code. And that's really AIGovOps stands for AI Governance Operationalization. It's the same thing as DevOps or Dev Security Ops. It's the automation of fundamentals that make software quality good. But in this case, we're making AI good. And Bob, you have a much better way of saying it than I just did, but that's it. Fundamentally, code to make AI gooder.
Yeah. Well, so Ken and I have
you-
been working together for about 30 years. And what we've discovered is that PDFs and meetings and well-intentioned people tend to create a lot of bottlenecks that get to a maybe gate. So the purpose of the AI GovOps Foundation is to ship good AI code to prevent bad AI code with a global community of everybody who cares about it, whether it's policy, industry, government, practitioners. And the big one is it good for humanity? Shipped in a safe and auditable way. And Cesar, I got to say, one thing I think we talked before, people have heard of the laws of robotics. Remember, those laws were made up, right? They were made up for a book 84, 86 years ago. They don't exist. It's not a thing, right? There are no laws for AI. And you've noticed just in the last couple of weeks, the U.S. Department of Defense and Anthropic got into a big fight over what the line was. And do you remember the two lines? It's extraordinary. They said, first of all, Anthropic said, you can't use our code and our models to automatically launch weapons without humans in the loop. By the way, seems like a pretty good bottom line to me. The second thing they said is you can't use it to spy on all Americans. And by the way, not some Americans. That literally was the push came to shove, where the Defense Department said, hey, we want to blacklist these folks as enemies of the people because they thought maybe it would be important for humans to be in the loop when launching weapons. We saw the movie, folks. It ended badly. So how do humans retain what should be in the garden of humanity, right? that matters a lot. So yeah,
Love it.
Lord.
Love it. I mean, you took my question on like basics of GovOps to like Caesar, we're not doing this for GovOps. This is like humanity needs this.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. So, like taking it back to engineering though, right? Because I think the reason you guys see this as an utmost necessary is you have been in the trenches of engineering and you can see why this is failing, like why big organizations are getting rid of AI governance teams. It's not working, right? It's honestly not working. Unless it's a regulation or a law, it's not working, right? So, if I have to ask, it's pretty much open to both of you. Like, what's the biggest lesson from traditional like software quality that the AI world is ignoring right now? Like what's happening in the AI world right now that you think, we're missing, given you guys have, long history of working in the software industry.
You go first, Bob.
But yeah, so a way, and by the way, Sue Easy E, who's a wonderful thinker about this in the UK and worked with regulators a lot. Every AI system that's deployed without automated governments is, as she says, a technical debt and liability machine, right? The risk compounds quietly, relentlessly, and now agenically until the first audit hits or the first guardrail hits. Because remember, no one's ever said, Cesar, I want to get in my car, go to the store and come back. And the good news is I've got guardrails in case I have a problem driving. When you use the term guardrails, that means there's a crash. Okay. That's what you use guardrails for. You don't use them, by the way, to guide the car. So those micro adjustments, the auditable shipment of policy, so we know everything that happened, we can track it, we have immutable logging, we have cryptographic proof, by the way, which both lawyers love and hate. They're like, don't make an auditable proof of everything you did. And then the lawyers say, wait, we need an auditable proof of everything we did, right? What happened is the process piece of shipping policy as code. And to Ken's point, if you don't know what is happening every second, you can assume you are creating tech debt and liability every second that you've deployed AI. Ken's got a long history of test and quality, but Ken had a couple terrifying examples, I think, in the Friday fail session that he does every week on LinkedIn.
I
So
would love to. I mean, if it's shareable, then I would love to hear about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Now,
Yeah.
I'll share a couple stories with you, but let me start off by saying this. Really the fundamental problem, one of the fundamental problems with AI today, regardless of GovOps, is that people, because it's becoming so easy to develop and so easy to ship, everybody is dropping the fundamentals of good software. I'm going to start with one example, which was a few months ago, Grok updated their algorithm. And if you followed that case, one of the challenges they had with that is you could now take images of celebrities, and in some cases, I think it was 26,000 images of underage minors were actually sent through the algorithm, and, underaged images were produced that should not have been able to be produced. And the challenge you have with that is that when XAI updated Grok, they did not have feature flags. They did not have country zones. They did not have automated rollback. They could only patch forward. Since when did we start shipping software that didn't have these basic fundamentals? It's been 15 years since I shipped something that didn't have automated deployment and automated rollback. But here we are, one of the major LLMs in the marketplace, Grok, and they're like, hey, let's just roll this out. And oh, crap, we've made a mistake and we have to patch our way forward in this major platform that's causing real harm to the universe. And those images can't be taken back.
Yeah.
Real images of real underage minors that are now out there on the internet, on the dark web, that are never going to be taken back because some company didn't follow the basics of good software, let alone governance. And, we're here to talk about governance, but you also have to have fundamentals in place. But yeah, I could tell you more and more. There's one of the reasons Bob and I are passionate about this is if you actually add it up and look deeply at it, there is real harm happening to humanity today. There are already a couple of settlements from suicide cases from individuals related to relationships building with their AI becoming unstable. There's another dozen plus lawsuits happening for people that have experienced this. We just saw the case settled, or at least the Meta and YouTube lost the case in terms of social media. People have to realize that that is going to be happening in the AI world as well. And I'll just go one quick thing. It's not just the big providers. In the case of Character AI, they were building on top of Gemini from Google, but they released an AI to an underage minor who developed a relationship with it. And that underage minor took his life. And that's now been settled out of court. So we don't know for sure, but we do know that Google and Character AI. And so you have to, oh, and there was another example too, where a company, I'll have to go look it up, launched a chatbot that people could use it to generate Python code. So it's just a support chatbot for our company, but they didn't lock it down. And so now you have a chatbot from your company generating code that somebody else is using, and you thought it was just there to answer customer support questions. So you have all of these mistakes that people are making when they're rolling AI out without these guardrails. They're not thinking about blast radius. They're not thinking about rollback, and they're certainly not thinking about governance, and real harm is happening in the world.
Fantastic. Yes, 100% agree with that. It's a burning issue right now, right? And I think what I'm trying to get now I mean, the issue is real. We know the harm is real. It's bigger than some people think. It's like humanity is at like risk here, is what
Yes.
we have talked so far, right? Now I need to get like I'm trying to get into how does governance as code solve it? Right. So I think like what we can do next to help our audience here is what is governance as code and why do you think it's needed right now for this scenario? Right. So let's talk about
Yeah, let's talk, by the way, about, first of all, there are, I would say, probably at this point, millions of people who are practitioners and in governance and in vendors and researchers, all who are very well intentioned. By the way, I assume good intentions in the world. Most humans are wonderful. Some humans aren't. It's a messy world. But the problem we have now is that how people govern in any company starts generally in the same way. There's a form, there's a website, there's a meeting. Sometimes it's called the AI Council. Ken and I have been part of lots of these different sort of groups over time. And they ask a bunch of very sensible questions about risk, Cesar. And the people, by the way, answer the questions, do their best to tell the truth, or at least give the answer that those folks would like to hear so they can get their project to move forward. Everyone tries really hard to do the right thing. And that becomes a document, a PDF, Excel file, whatever that is. Here's the problem. That set of words about what's going to happen and who's going to do it and how it's going to result is completely disconnected typically from the engineering process. So the model used and the code and all the things that happen, that PDF is, as Ken said, really policy theater, because the next steps are things actually happen that actually have real impact, positive and negative, and that code as it shipped in the seconds and the hours where there should be micro adjustments and evaluation and drift detection and real-time governance. Mostly those systems don't exist. We know how to do that. We've already done that in DevOps and SecOps and all the other ops where we took manual processes and turned them into automated processes. But the distinction here is that the non-deterministic nature of the input and the non-deterministic nature of the output means that we don't know if the thing shipping is good or bad based on community standards and ethics and morals and what I call human flourishing at the center. Is it good for humanity? And how do we decide what's good for humans and keep our people safe on things that really matter? That's the different moral equation that hasn't really been part of most of these automation discussions, because automation is a mechanical process, and Ken and I built lots of them. But the practitioner community, the human in the loop, and the human values in the loop, that's different. So Ken has a term called governance as code, GAC. We got to work on that that name, but governance as code is a new thing. GAC, is GAC good? GAC getting gacker, getting gooder. that really matters. So, Ken, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you gotta eat your gack. It sounds like it's like, what was that thing? Soylent Green. It sounds like it should be something like that. It's humans. Anyhow, now let me frame it a little bit this way for
Everyone
you,
tastes
Caesar.
different.
Is yeah. Well, let me frame it for you a little bit this way. So we're actually working as a community on what our framework is for governance tools. And one of the challenges you have with AI, actually, let me throw this line out with you here. And this is one of the mistakes a lot of people make when they roll out models. The whole purpose when you roll a model out, whether it's a customer engagement model, it's a sales model, even if it's a customer support model, you rolled a model out that is intended to change customer and user behavior. In other words, you intend to change the universe that this model operates in. The challenge you have is that a lot of people train the model on the world as it is, not as it is going to become. And so they don't do ongoing monitoring. That is one of the gaps we have in governance, is that you have to anticipate that your model will drift. Whether your model itself drifts or it's successful and the world drifts, because you are intending to change the world with your model. So why wouldn't you monitor for drift? Another challenge you have is, let's just say, the fundamentals of fairness and inclusivity. Most companies don't measure that up front. And so when you're doing planning and the planning phase for your solutions, how are you going to measure? And it's easy to actually measure, because most bias in a model comes because the training data had a bias, and you could measure that, and you know that you're going to push your model into a biased direction. One of my favorite examples was Apple, when they launched their Apple credit card. Within, I think it was about 48 hours, 72 hours after it launched, even Wozniak, one of the founders of Apple, chimed on X, saying that Apple had a bias against women for their Apple credit card. And Apple publicly stated it wasn't possible because they didn't use gender as a feature in their model. Well, a few weeks later, after people analyzed it, one thing that Apple did use is they used shopping history. And did you know that in the real world, there is a bias in terms of credit availability for women versus men, despite the amount of income and despite the credit rating? And did you know that women and men shop differently? And did you know that an AI model could actually figure out that the world wants to give women less credit than men, no matter what fairness should be? Apple didn't think about it. The planning didn't think about it. The subcontractor they used didn't think about it. And so that's an example. You've got all the way from post-production needing to monitor, all the way from the beginning. And so that's one of the challenges we have, is that there are a lot of solutions we need to have the ecosystem create at scale that can help companies be successful. And there's all that space in between as you're developing and running your models. Hopefully
Yeah,
that helps a little bit, but
it,
we don't
it
have a
does.
one size fits all or a single bullet for this. And there's honestly not a single provider that has a sweet solution either.
Yeah, no, it does. But let me bring a bigger issue here, right? Because I
Mhm.
like that. I like, so for our audience, what we did is we talked about what are the issues and what are the harms, and we are talking about, why is it difficult to do this, and why GovOps might help this, right? But I think the question here is about incentives, right? Because what we're
Mm.
talking about is Apple did this or Facebook was in lawsuit. What incentive do they have to do this in the right way? I mean, I can understand in a regulated industry like financial and healthcare, they have laws and they have other things. And so, they would do it. But now we're talking about tech companies and we're talking about their biases and what is happening. But would they rather just pay the fine and get out of it as we're seeing it right now? Or would they actually do the right thing? Because we're talking about a big humanity crisis and all of those things, but do we care? I don't know.
Now,
I'm
you
just
have a
asking
great
you.
point about just paying the fine, because I think it was Anthropic. I think they were the ones that got fined a couple $1 billion for using copyrighted material for training their model, and they just paid it. But you know how much money they made by consuming that into their models and running it that way? So the challenge, one of the challenges we're having right now, though, is when GDPR came out, there was a hammer that hit privacy and the threat was pretty significant. And I worked at Microsoft at that time, and I spent several months sitting with lawyers working on how do we harden Microsoft and how do we actually implement this correctly? Because, I think the fine was something like 5% of your global revenue. Wasn't even profit, it was global revenue. So now we have some governments that are passing, we have the EU AI Act, but it looks like it's getting slowly watered down and dates are being pushed out. And so there's not, honestly, not a regulation in place yet that has that kind of hammer. But the other trend that Bob and I are seeing is governance via court law, by tort law, by lawsuits. And so it's really these settlements that you're seeing that are starting to become the de facto compliance laws. And as you mentioned, most of the successful cases we're seeing right now seem to be in the healthcare and mental health space, but it's broadening. One of the things I like to say is lawyers like to make money, and if it's easy to make money, they're going to go where it's easy. And one of the challenges people don't realize is this with AI. In the past, to prove liability, you'd have to do a lot of work to show that the company had flawed policies and practices, and you'd have to build a complicated case. Now you just subpoena the logs from the AI, and you've got all that you need. AI actually makes it easier for companies or lawyers to sue you. So there's your incentive. If you didn't realize it, getting sued is your risk, and it's happening faster, and lawyers love to make easy money. There's my pitch. What do you say, Bob?
Well, I think there's another piece of the puzzle. I say one of the big questions is what are the spaces we should reserve for humanity? And by the way, it resonates. We have a global community of more than 10,000 folks that have expressed interest. By the way, please come to AIGovOps Foundation and join. It's free. We need folks around the world to make sure that we're diverse, we're representing all the communities, we're being kind, and we're treating humans as the purpose in this process, not the AI. But at the intersection of silicon and humanity, there is a question: is if we can do it, should we do it? What's the community standard?
Mm-hmm.
And also, as we think about all the benefits of AI, we think particularly about communities, indigenous people, traditionally underrepresented people, people who are suffering already from poverty or violence or all of the things that happen in humanity when things are unequal. There is a have and have not moment here, Cesar, for people that have access to electricity, water, the best models. I don't know if you noticed the economics of AI models, but um, Sora was just shut down last week by OpenAI because they were losing $1 million a day on the cost of Sora. Now, by the way, it's an unusual startup that can lose a third of $1 billion a year on a loss leader. So remember, there's some people in the 8 billion people on the planet who get access to the best models and the best tools. There's some people that have no access, and it's getting worse. I would say it's getting worse sort of by the day. So we have to decide a bunch of things. And one of those things is what is good for humanity that we should ship, what is bad that we shouldn't. And you may have noticed already in your conversation, Caesar, that we've got people that say, no AI. We're not quite, by the way, to people who are throwing sand in the machines or burning down the factories like we've had in other industrial revolutions. But there is huge backlash to how jobs are changing, how economies are changing. The term I hear most commonly for developers is people are overemployed, which is a really insulting thing to say to people who think they're doing a good job in their company. This is actually a leader in a large tech company that said this a couple of weeks ago, and I was just shocked to hear that. But humanity is changing in huge ways. We have to think about what does that mean? What do we want humans to reserve for ourselves? Um, you know, these are really important conversations that the technology has the ability to disintermediate us, start doing our jobs to the point that we are not necessary. And by the way, if that sounds dramatic, it's because it is. What do humans do?
It
What
is.
gives value and purpose?
No,
It
100%,
really matters.
100%. And that's why, yeah, and that's why I started with the term incentives, because it really matters, right? I mean, the only reason, I mean, like I started HumanLens It's a for profit though, right? Not a non-profit. But as I'm doing customer discovery, I'm becoming clear that if you don't have to do it, you won't do it, right? And that's why I'm talking about incentives, because depending on who you are, where you are, and we know there are companies who dismantle their responsible AI teams, right? And we know that happened, right? And the reason they did it is because it was, um, they were losing the competitive edge because other companies were not doing it, right? So, like, I mean, that's why I was getting into incentives. Is like, what are the incentives for everybody to follow the same thought process that you and I have, right? And why are they not doing
Well,
it, right? I
yeah,
mean, that's what I'm trying to get.
let me throw, yeah,
Yeah.
let me introduce you to a thinker, who's a really great policy guy, Phil Philos. Ken and I have been talking with Phil. He might be a great guest for your podcast. He's out of Vietnam. He's been globally working in very interesting policy with UNHCR and other things. And he was talking to Ken and I. We're going to actually have a meetup with him next week about the question of global value chain. So it's an interesting question when you say, what are the rules that governments put in place, local, state, federal, and extranational like EU, about how you can use AI in your everyday life? And I work at a company, by the way, my words are my own, but I work at General Motors, a wonderful company. We care a lot about safety. So can we put an AI thingy, an artifact, into something that we make? And by the way, if you can't use the thing that you make commercially, then you would question if it has value. It's a really important question of value because these are expensive things to create. How can we use them ethically? Do we have copyright? Are they good for the world? Are they safe? Or to Ken's point, there's lots of bad AI, there's lots of good AI. So Philip was talking about the kind of global value chain question to say, if I design a sneaker for Nike with AI, and I produce it in a factory, and you sort of go through the whole how value chain works and global supply chains work. There's a bunch of questions about local regulation that might be the incentives that you were talking about. Because right now, governments are running to ship AI faster and build AI data centers. Regulators are scared to over-regulate because they think of it as an arms race between sort of China and the US and Europe. And it's a very sort
Right.
of belligerent time for country. And I think consumer power is very strong. But we have to decide what the standards are. Because, Cesar, a question for you to sort of consider, maybe we could talk more about is, are there any laws that actually restrict the use of AI anywhere about anything that are actually enforced? And it's a great conversation because I can't think of one. I can think of lawsuits and I can
Mhm.
think of potential regulations, but I'm trying to think of in the actual case of you can't do that with AI. What's the line?
There's
I think
nothing
we need to
federal.
help set it.
There's nothing federal. There are state level laws. Most states have them.
California, yep,
As
most
I
do. Yep.
what I know right now, there's nothing federal. I mean, older laws, non AI laws apply. Like, I mean, there's like civil rights and other laws that will apply. You know, but there's no AI specific laws at a federal level, right? So that's the reality of it right now, and that's what I was talking about is incentive to follow this. And also, when you have enough money that you don't care, and that's another point that I was trying to make is like,
Yes.
I'll break the law and I'll just
Yes,
pay fines
absolutely.
if I'm
Yeah.
making more money,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, that's right. Write the check. It's
Okay.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So, how about we change the direction a little bit? Because I mean, what we established is where this problem is real. And Bob, you've been doing a great job saying, yes, the problem is real and it's about humanity, not even like small problem. It's a bigger problem than just AI risk, right? And we established that it's a problem. We established that, companies don't have proper incentive to do this right as of now because there are not proper laws. Um, but let's move towards more a technical question here that's bugging me right now, and with like because I have like people like you who have done this so long, I would like to hear your perspective on as we move towards autonomous agents? Like, that's a big question right now, right? The risk changes. I mean, we're already worried about machine learning making decisions, and AI or machine learning or whatever you call it, making decisions, and humans are still in the loop, but the discriminations are happening. We're already worried about it. But in last 2 years, and especially right now, everybody's working on agents right now, right? So, like, the whole thing, you can throw everything out of the window right now, because it's not going to work, because the decisions are being made on like right that minute by an agent. Humans are not in the loop. How does our approach to even like audit trail have to evolve when the system is learning and changing and doing it right there, right? So as a governance person, I am worried, right? So how are you thinking about agents and the risk and compliance and audit trail? How are you thinking about that right now?
I'm going to let Bob go first, but man, this is too big a topic for this one podcast.
Well, let me start with a couple notions. So when we talk, let's define our terms for a bit. So when people think about agents, often they're just describing a chatbot, and the chatbot is something where you type in a question and you get an answer. By the way, the Chipotle chatbot had a really interesting security issue a few months ago, where when you asked it a question, it would also do work for you. So you could ask it how to make chocolate chip cookies, and the Chipotle chatbot didn't have sufficient guardrails to not answer that question. But that's a fairly simple, fairly deterministic problem. An agent is something, Cesar, that has agency, which means it can make some limited decisions, hopefully limited, around some topics. It's got some authority and it's got some tool use. And a great example of an agent is Ken and I, we live about 150 miles apart from each other. So I can send an agent out to say, find a place for Ken and I to meet up for coffee, because we have a weekly meeting of the foundation. We want to catch up on details. And by the way, I've written an agent that can go out and do that. It has the ability to make a phone call with my voice because I've given it permission. Okay. It can book a restaurant, although we normally meet, frankly, at a coffee shop. And it could use my credit card to book the restaurant within $20 limit. Okay. That's an agent. The difficulty, Cesar, is that when people think about agents, they don't think of them as employees, but you hire agents with a job description, with a set of rules, and you have monitoring in real time. Imagine if people always talk about audit trails and logs and other things. By the way, that means something already happened. That's a bad thing. What you want is micro adjustments in real time. So when the agent, by the way, calls on my behalf and says, I want to make a first class one-way ticket reservation to Bangkok, Thailand for $10,000, I'm the human in the loop. We talk about the human in the loop. You have to define what loop the human has to be in and what that means to the agent. The other thing about agents is agents can hire agents. And I don't know if you've looked at pencil.ai, which is a very popular GitHub repository in the last like 3 weeks. And by the way, it looks at Clawbot and the other 12 versions of Clawbot, and then it does oversights of agents. But in Pencil, you hire a CEO with a set of the job description and a set of soul, right? And a job description and a set of tools. And then the CEO hires all the other agents. Well, I can tell you, most teams aren't that well managed. Most humans don't do well at figuring out how they're telling each other what they're doing and what the job is. And we do a lot of toing and froing. There's a lot of slacking and chatting. And probably Ken and I, we probably chat with each other 5 or 10 times a day on all sorts of different topics because we want to stay in sync with each other. We want to make sure we're both doing the best thing for the foundation. Agents don't have that notion. Agents are executing code, but you're giving a virus a credit card without the right oversight.
Mm-hmm.
You are creating liability
Giving a virus your
in
credit
real
card.
time. Yeah. You're streaming dangerous things.
Yeah. So let me, Bob likes to paint sort of the visionary picture, and I like to come up with the failure examples. So we'll just start with a few failure examples. A friend of mine, we literally had an event just 2 days ago focused on the healthcare industry and AI governance in the healthcare industry. And a friend of mine said that in his company, whenever they're reviewing models that go out, he commented that the don't list was longer than the do list for their agents. And I looked at him and I actually started laughing because There's this great example from less than a year ago. Team deployed an agent using Replit, and in the guardrails for the master prompt for it, they said, "Do not delete any tables," and they put it in all caps. And they said it 3 times in a row because that makes it really sticky for the AI if you repeat it 3 times in a row, because the AI doesn't listen when you say it once. So they said it 3 times in a row in the master prompt in all caps, so the agent knew that it wasn't supposed to. But the challenge you and I know as you deal with AI, there's a thing called a context window. And so when the agent got a little overwhelmed, it forgot that context of don't delete tables. And guess what it did? It deleted the master customer contact table. Deleted it completely.
My
And then it
goodness.
freaked out. And guess what it did? It recreated the table and it repopulated it with fake data. And then it lied that it did it. And the people said, how could the AI do that? And the simple answer is this with agents. And I'm going to get back to human in the loop in a second. But you can't use these guardrails in prompts. You must have limits in code, just like you do with an API. Just like you do when you're setting up anything with an account, you limit the permissions of that account. The fact that that agent had the ability to delete a table meant it would eventually. If the agent has the ability to spend more than $20, it will eventually. There's a great story, and I'm not going to go deep into this one, but for your audience, go look up on YouTube, go look up the Wall Street Journal article on Claudius. Claudius ran a vending machine at the Wall Street Journal, and the employees managed to get it to go bankrupt within a couple of days, buying stuff and giving it away for free. And then they hired a CEO agent to manage Claudius. And the CEO agent was convinced that communism was the correct form of government and that they needed to give everything away for free. So they bankrupted twice within a week. So, if it can happen, it will. But human in the loop is one other thing I want to get to. And this is an interesting thing you said about incentives. So Cigna is a healthcare company that had a model to try to assess for approving benefits for their subscribers. And lawyers got a hold and looked at it. In this day and age, if you're in healthcare and you have any sort of a model that has a higher decline rate than when you had humans, you're just asking to get sued. So they got sued. And Cigna said, well, you can't sue us because we had humans in the loop. They looked over, the agent didn't approve it. And so the lawyers pulled the logs and they divided by the number of cases. And they said, well, you had an average of 1.2 seconds per case for the human to look at it. And so, that's a pretty easy case because I'm positive that 1.2 seconds is not enough human in the loop. I don't know what enough human in the loop is, but I know 1.2 seconds isn't enough. And that goes back to some of the challenges we were saying earlier is we have these concepts of guardrails, but we don't actually have laws in place that tell us what the target is. Is 10 seconds enough? There's no regulation that says what effective human in the loop is. So you might throw it in, but you're still open to lawsuits now and interpretation. And you know that the lawyers kind of padded that because they didn't weight it by, oh, this was like a 99% positive that the model was correct versus, oh, this one was not super positive and the person took 10 minutes on it. They didn't care. They just divided by the denominator and said, 1.2 seconds. You better settle with us. So interesting challenges, but guardrails need to become agents need to be limited in code and they need to be managed through code. You can't use master prompts because the context window will always overrun and it will always lose its focus.
Love it. Love it. And
Yeah,
we have
and Cesar, yeah, let me. Oh,
please
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
The one thing I'd love to, if people only get one thing out of this conversation, I'd love it to not use the word guardrails anymore. Guardrails are an interesting concept that work well in meetings. It's a PDF. It's not a. So I'm gonna read you a paragraph that Ken and I have worked on that the community really believes. So AIGovOps is governance that runs like engineering. It's the discipline of automating every element of safe, reliable, and compliant AI from design through deployment, through operations, through sunsetting. That means governance versioned like code, tested before deployment, always observable in production and auditable by default. And by the way, in real time. Because remember that when people talk about logs and guardrails and audit, that is the accident already happened. And if you have an agent, and so another way to say it is you must have a kill switch. If you ask only one question, you just leave with one question. Hey, so you're deploying agents. Does everybody know how to press the big red button? By the way, this happened to me. I was with a friend in a data center many years ago in New Jersey. He had brought his son with him in a big IBM mainframe data center run by EDS back in the 80s. Yes, I am pretty old. And his kid walked over and pressed the big red button, which, by the way, was the big red button that stopped everything and caused the Halon to deploy. Now, he only did that once. I think he learned his lesson, but everybody should know where the big red button is and know how to push it, because if you have agents, that means they have agency. And if they have agency, all of the things that we've talked about and many more we haven't even thought about will occur. They will occur. Entropy turns out to be a thing, right? And so things do move towards random disorder unless they're managed, always. So,
Love it. Love it.
goodness,
One thing
scary,
before,
wonderful.
it is scary, right? I said, love it. I love the description, not the situation, right? Uh, but, but what I would say is like before we, I mean, I want to learn more about your organization's goals and what you're trying to do as a last part of this podcast. But before that, one last thing, right? There's a tension here, right? Because I mean, I have the way I'm building HumanLens right now is exactly how you're defining it. It's a policy as a code system. Engineers can call HumanLens test functions within their VS Code or whatever development platform they're working in, check for accuracy, check for bias, and then they also have a governance platform where they answer all the questions that NIST or whatever organization they are trying to follow using the agents. And it's really it's built for engineers, right? I mean, engineers in the focus. The more people I'm talking to, the tension is, I can see that the regulatory folks are saying, should engineer be in charge of this? Is that okay? Right. So there's a tension here, right? So the even for me, the way I'm building the solution is engineers are the focus because I want to enable engineers to be authentic and ethical. Right. And I talked to Stephen Kells before you guys, and he has the whole premise of how we can do that. And I'm trying to follow that. Like, I mean, what I hear from governance folks is, I'm not sure, man. Do I want to give the driver's seat to the engineers here, right? So, like, are you hearing that? Because I feel like you are also trying to empower engineers as much as possible, and you're trying to drive this as an engineering principle. But are you getting a pushback from the governance folks on? I'm not sure if that's the right way to do it.
No, quite. Yeah. So, great question. I would say quite the opposite. We're a cross-functional community. So the weird part of this is AI is an engineering discipline. It turns out the magic that happened when ChatGPT shipped is that 8 billion people could type some words and do some things they couldn't do before. That is software delivered. Okay. So that's why we focused on policy as process, because that's new. But the folks that were getting a huge amount of I mean, I think we have 10,000 people that are inbound that we're managing. We'll talk a little bit about how we're scaling this, but they're executives, technology founders, researchers, policymakers, investors, priests, philosophers. I mean, it's a wide community because the impact on humanity is all of us. But we have to start with policy as code. And by the way, we think everybody can contribute to this. So in your work, Cesar, as you think about what are the standards, we start with what are the questions, what are the checklists, what's the contract, how do we move forward, how do we know what good looks like? And everybody can contribute to this. And we think over time, some people say, here's kind of the baseline for policies code, and then we're better than the baseline. Right now, we're just defining globally the baseline because it does not exist. There's no NIST or ISO or FinOps or DevOps anywhere globally. Like, just not here, and it's terrifying. I mean, it's a huge opportunity to make the world a better place, right? So
yeah, I just want to chime in and Cesar, your comments about HumanLens And your approach is exactly one of the reasons why we started the foundation. Also, because we believe that there wasn't enough innovation in this space or capital investment. And so we wanted to help define this as a segment that needs investment, that needs innovation, because a couple of things we've mentioned already. No standards. Well, standards are very fragmented. They're fragmented by country, by state. The only way you can deal with that is not through non-engineered solutions. The engineers are the only ones that can create code and technology that can deal with the variations in terms of regulations in different markets. So you've got to have a technical solution. And if you have to have a technical solution, it needs to be in a way that the engineers don't create the policy. We need to have the infrastructure that creates the tools that allow them to automatically apply the policy, and the tools stay up to date with the policies. We're not asking engineers to think through the policies. We're asking them to put in the XML to define, use this tool to do blah. And how it does it is handled by people that are actually tied in with the policymakers, and that the tool is up to date. Because governance policies are evolving as fast as AI is. So it is not possible to do it in a non-technical, non-automated way.
Love it. Love it. That's my mindset. I'm loving the mindset that you're coming from. But I'm also like, as I'm talking to more potential customers and other folks, like I'm realizing that there's a inherent tension between traditional governance functions and the way we are thinking about it right now, right? So that's why I wanted your perspective on it. Okay, so yeah, yeah. Please go ahead, please.
Um, we wanted to build a global
Yeah,
community so that everybody had access to great thinking. We think, by the way, that by making sure we're global, we're diverse, we support all languages. And by the way, we've just launched a community on Circle, and we're looking for community moderators and folks that care about humanity. Um, but we want to build standards that the community can discuss and publish, just like we have for FinOps or DevOps or anything else. But the difference is the impact of this engineering is potentially the end of the world. So if
yeah,
AI gets
yeah.
to launch missiles without human in the loop, we all saw the movie. That's not the movie we want. We want the garden of humanity to be protected, to be amazing, right?
Yeah,
So
and
I'm
people
sorry
might
that we
think
lost
that's
Ken here, but yeah,
yeah, maybe he'll
yeah.
rejoin. But that's like what you said is so real because everything is a button to press, right? So people might think that we are being dramatic about this, but we talked about sending an email and we give access and they send an email or deleted an email. It's no different from launching a missile if you're giving an access. So like really, like people think it's dramatic, but it's not if you think about it,
Well,
right?
it when you talk about agency, and if you haven't used computer control, and by the way,
Yeah.
I love computer control that Anthropic and OpenAI and everybody has here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You say, "Go ahead, AI, take over my computer and do stuff."
Yeah.
By the way, if the person saying that is the person that has a missile console in front of them, or is flying an airplane, and I mean, and people go, well, is it the end of the world? I hope not. I love humanity. We're messy, but I really like us. I'm for humans, right? But we got to figure out how to ship AI that's good for humans, and it is too hard to do manually, which is the current process
Yeah.
that we have. We have to set
Yeah.
standards and automate. So, yep.
Yeah. Totally
Hey, Caesar,
agree.
just
We're
in
almost at
the
time. Yeah.
yep, I put in
Please go ahead. Yeah.
the chat here. Just come join us at AIGovOpsFoundation.org. Um, we have a nonprofit community. It doesn't cost anything to join. We do take donations because right now Ken and I are funding this with the support of some other folks. Um, and we're going to get Ken a better internet connection here because clearly we need the one. I don't know what happened there, something, some kind of something. By the way, we're looking for folks to help curate communities who want to think about things like healthcare and finance and all the different topics. We like people that are kind, that care about humans, that help build better standards. And I'm working on the open source community to launch. I've got some initial folks working on this. What does that open source look like and how do we share it? So, Ken, any final
That's awesome.
thoughts?
I think he's frozen.
I don't know if you
So
can hear me, but
Is he still frozen?
can you hear me?
Yep, we
Yeah,
can't
I'm
hear
still
you.
frozen.
Yep,
Your,
we got
your
you.
video is frozen, but we
Yeah,
can hear you.
yeah, I think I gotta get an
I don't
update
know.
applied to my computer or something. But anyhow, no, what Bob said is good, and yeah, we're excited to share the news about what we're working on, and it's a burgeoning community. I don't know why our message is resonating, and people constantly reach out to us. It's exciting. It's more than we anticipated.
That's amazing.
Yep.
I mean, I am
Humility.
jealous. I mean, I always feel like, oh, well, I wish I was in Seattle so that I could actually, be in your in-person sessions. You should do remote so that, people like us can also, join these
Well,
sessions as much as possible.
we we've just signed up with Circle. It's a big commitment. It's about $5,000 a year. Everything in the foundation has been paid for by Ken and I and a few other friends who are just doing it because we think it's a good cause. We do take donations. We're a 501c3. We're also, by the way, a 501c3/6, meaning we're a nonprofit for technical education, and we care about the world. So our plan is to launch in every language and in every country, and to be kind and find a place for humanity to peacefully coexist and thrive in a world of AI. So thank you
Notice
very
that
much, Cesar.
I
It's
noticed
a
that in
pleasure.
your LinkedIn post, Bob. Like, and
Mm.
at first I was like, "What is happening here?" And then I see like different languages, and amazing. Thank you for your inclusivity, inclusivity there. So thank you so much, and
Love.
gentlemen,
Thank
thank
you.
you again for your perspective. You bring a wealth of knowledge from software industry to AI GovOps or AI risk management right now for general people, and that's tremendous. You are the kind of folks who can actually like move this forward from engineering standpoint. Great to have you in this episode today for Humanizing AI. Thank you so much for being the guest today. Really, really grateful for that.
And thanks for having us,
Thank
Caesar.
you. We really appreciate you. Thanks a lot. You take care. Cheers.
Thank you so much. Thank you.